What does it mean for a country seeking strategic autonomy if it cannot access the core software of its most advanced fighter aircraft, especially when that platform is central to its future air power? Consider this. India is evaluating a potential $36 billion acquisition of 114 Rafale fighters while operating only 31 squadrons against a sanction requirement of 42. This video examines how a dispute over source code access has evolved into a broader question of sovereignty, capability, and long-term geopolitical alignment, without drawing premature conclusions. If this situation escalates, India could face structural limits on how it deploys and upgrades a major portion of its air force. If it fails to resolve, procurement timelines may slow, deepening existing capability gaps. If it is resolved through compromise, it could redefine how technology transfer is negotiated between major defense partners. Each outcome affects not just India's operational flexibility, but also the balance of power across South Asia and the Indo-Pacific. To understand the stakes, you have to look at the evolution of India's air power strategy. Since independence, India has pursued a mixed procurement model, sourcing aircraft from the Soviet Union, later Russia, alongside Western suppliers. This approach aimed to avoid overdependence on any single partner while gradually building domestic capability through licensed production and indigenous programs. The push towards self-reliance intensified under the Atmanirbhar Bharat policy framework, which emphasizes domestic design, manufacturing, and control over critical technologies. The Rafale fighter, developed by Dassault Aviation, became central to this strategy after winning the medium multi-role combat aircraft competition in the early 2010s. However, the original plan to acquire 126 aircraft collapsed in 2015 due to disagreements over cost, liability, and technology transfer. A scaled-down government-to-government deal was signed in 2016 for 36 aircraft at a cost of €7.87 billion, or approximately $8.7 billion at the time. That agreement addressed immediate operational gaps, but did not include full access to critical software systems. At the center of the current issue are three key components: the Thales RBE2 AESA radar, the Modular Data Processing Unit, and the SPECTRA electronic warfare suite. These systems define the aircraft's sensor fusion, targeting logic, and survivability in contested environments. French authorities have classified the underlying source code as highly sensitive intellectual property, developed over decades, and have declined to transfer it. This means India cannot independently modify radar algorithms, electronic warfare libraries, or mission system integration without external approval. The implications are technical but also strategic. Modern air combat increasingly depends on software-defined capabilities. Control over source code determines whether a country can rapidly adapt to new threats, integrate indigenous weapons, or modify operational parameters during conflict. Without that control, every significant upgrade requires coordination with the original manufacturer, introducing potential delays and constraints. Key actors are shaping this dynamic. On the Indian side, the Ministry of Defense and the Indian Air Force are balancing urgent operational requirements against long-term autonomy goals. The Air Force currently fields approximately 31 fighter squadrons, well below the sanctioned strength of 42, creating immediate pressure to expand capacity. On the French side, the government and companies like Thales Group are prioritizing protection of proprietary technologies and maintaining control over advanced systems. At the same time, Russia has re-entered the discussion with an alternative offer. The Su-57E fifth-generation fighter, proposed by United Aircraft Corporation, reportedly includes full access to source code and design documentation. Russian officials have indicated that such access would allow Indian engineers to independently customize and modernize the aircraft, aligning with India's self-reliance objectives. This contrast has introduced a competitive dimension to the decision-making process. Recent developments have intensified the stakes. India is considering acquiring up to 114 additional Rafale aircraft under the Multi-Role Fighter Aircraft program, a deal valued at approximately $36 billion. This would make Rafale one of the largest components of the Indian Air Force fleet, second only to the more than 270 Su-30 MKI fighters currently in service. At the same time, the lack of source code access raises concerns about integrating indigenous systems such as the Astra Beyond Visual Range missile or potentially the BrahMos air-launched cruise missile without external approval cycles. The numerical dimension is critical. With only 31 operational squadrons, India faces a shortfall of 11 squadrons relative to its planned force structure. This gap affects its ability to simultaneously manage potential conflicts along both its western and northern borders. Procurement delays or constraints on operational flexibility could therefore have direct implications for deterrence. What if India proceeds with the Rafale acquisition under current terms? In that scenario, the Air Force would gain a highly capable platform with advanced sensors and survivability features, but would remain dependent on French approval for significant software modifications. Over a 30 to 40-year service life, this dependency could translate into higher upgrade costs, slower adaptation cycles, and limited integration of domestic technologies. What if India shifts toward alternatives offering greater technology transfer? Choosing platforms like the Su-57E with full source code access could enhance autonomy and enable deeper domestic integration. However, this path carries its own trade-offs, including interoperability challenges with Western systems, potential differences in performance characteristics, and broader geopolitical implications for India's relationships with partners such as the United States and France. The geopolitical consequences extend beyond procurement decisions. India's choice will influence defense industrial partnerships, technology ecosystems, and alignment within the broader Indo-Pacific security architecture. A deeper reliance on Western platforms reinforces ties with Europe and the United States, while a shift toward Russian systems could signal a recalibration of strategic relationships. At the same time, China's ongoing advancements in air power, including long-range air-to-air missiles and next-generation fighter development, continue to shape the regional threat environment. Economically, the scale of the MRFA program means that decisions made now will affect India's defense budget allocation, industrial base development, and technology absorption capacity for decades. The balance between immediate capability and long-term sovereignty becomes a central consideration. As this situation evolves, the core issue is not simply access to software, but control over the future trajectory of air power. Stability depends on the ability to adapt quickly, integrate new technologies, and operate independently under pressure. Dependence introduces friction, while autonomy requires investment and trade-offs. What to watch next is how negotiations progress on technology transfer, how India weighs competing offers, and whether a hybrid approach emerges that balances capability with control. The outcome will not just determine the composition of the Indian Air Force, but also signal how major powers manage the intersection of technology, sovereignty, and alliance politics in an increasingly contested global environment.